Good evening, or good morning, or good afternoon. And as I've kind of went down this road the last three episodes we've did, I'm going to basically come up or basically portray a disclaimer for what's going to happen on tonight's episode. Before we start tonight's program, here's a reminder that this episode will address alcoholism, which may be very sensitive to some of our viewers. Viewer discretion is advised. We remind you to please consult your doctor, your mental health professional, your outreach group, your sponsor, or specialist before adopting any change to your dietary, physical, and/or mental health regime. If you're looking for options to go down this road against alcoholism, please contact SAMHSA, the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, at 1-800 662 4357. Again, that's SAMHSA at 1-800 662 4357 or at samhsa.gov. The service is open 24/7, 365 days a year, and is a confidential, free information service for individuals and family members facing alcoholism amongst other mental health and or substance use disorders. And that said, let's begin. We realize our problems with alcoholism grow to an epic high when the world around us starts crumbling. Tonight, we talk to a gentleman whose story absolutely portrays that. This is the Venture Forward. Good evening, or good morning, or good afternoon. I have my guests up on the screen right now, and I'll get to you in 1 second, I promise. But I wanted to introduce you and also welcome you to tonight's Venture Forward, part 4 on alcoholism. And it is an absolute honor and pleasure to have our guest tonight, a gentleman by the name of Jeff. Jeff, how are you?
Hey, John, how are you doing?
Not bad at all. I'm still, how many weeks I've been doing this? 4 weeks. I'm still juggling all these things, and of
hmm
course, I would have the pre-roll and the intro all. It's fine. It's fine.
And I have to apologize because I had trouble. I just finished a meeting and I had trouble getting in, so I missed the intro, but that's okay. I'll just ad lib.
You know what? That's what I do all the time. It's just ad lib. I added stuff to this to the disclaimer that came out all disjunted. Oh, it's fine. It's fine. Progress, not perfection, right?
hmm
Before we begin, some comments that have popped up, and I just say some highs to the people on Facebook and YouTube this evening. Callie, hi, how are you? She's catching this while multitasking. Sarah says, and good evening to you, Sarah, watching on YouTube while eating supper. Glad you're having supper at this hour. That's good. Callie's loving the music. Des on YouTube says, good morning, John. Good morning to our friend from Australia. Hope you're doing well. And Callie made the jump over to YouTube, so she went from Facebook to YouTube. There's a jump: Facebook, YouTube, YouTube, Facebook. All right. So that said, um, I have known you for a very long time. You're a dear friend of mine,
Hmm.
and it's an absolute honor to have you on this program for sure. And it's really awesome to have you here. Um, the one thing that kind of surprised me is the fact that we both are dealing with this thing called alcoholism, right? It's something that I know is one of my three main addictions, and I know that you have fought this and you are fighting this as we all are, and I really love your story, and I'm really glad you're sharing it tonight. So I guess the place I start is where did it all begin? Where do you stand with it? What's going on?
Well, actually, I'm in pretty good shape. There, so I come from a history, parents of having parents that had alcoholism. It runs in my family, so I was always very conscious of it, and never really had any challenges in managing, myself. But about 10 years ago, I went through a very difficult time with work. I went through a difficult divorce. And a lot of turmoil in my life, with my job and living alone. And I I, I ended up, and I don't know if you would call it a real alcoholism, but I found myself spending more time at night, drinking more than a glass or two of wine, and where I started to worry is I found myself wanting more, when I would sit at night alone, dealing with some of the issues I was dealing with. I would find that it would be easy to have three to four,
Mm,
and 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 that went on for probably 6 months, where I finally became very conscious that, this is becoming an issue. This is becoming a problem that I need to really manage. And then I never had to stop entirely, but because I caught myself.
mm,
Thankfully I caught myself, before I really went down the wrong road, and I managed it. I pulled it back, and I have since managed it. But there have been times when off and on I would do more than I should,
mm-hmm.
but for the most part I managed it. And but I never am not conscious of it. You can't ever drop your guard.
Right,
Um, and otherwise it can consume you. It will consume you, And so I've been thankful that I've been able to manage it, but I know I can never not be conscious of it.
right,
And I can manage it in a way that, I can have a glass of wine at night, and not let myself get carried away. Unless I'm working all night, and that's when it gets bad. But I try to avoid that. And but it was a very difficult time in my life. I mean, you know some of the details. I went through a difficult divorce,
mm-hmm.
had a lot of violence in my home, state police in my home, lost my job because of the turmoil it was throwing me into, which really put me in a bad place, and kind of stopped me in my tracks. And so, I've it took me about I would say upwards of a year, I guess, to really fight my way out of it.
Mm,
It ebbs and flows,
sure.
but about a year, I would say, before I really kind of pulled myself together and was was at a point where I didn't feel like it was a huge threat to me, I guess is the way I characterize it.
Okay.
So does that make sense?
That makes a lot of sense. I
Yeah.
know in the thing I've told our viewers over the last few weeks is the fact that the alcoholism is one of the three chief addictions I have. Obviously, the
Hmm.
primary addiction, as you've seen me, big, small, is overeating and obesity.
Hmm.
That is my primary addiction. 628 days of me tracking my food, and I've lost 276 pounds in the process. there's a method to the madness. You do that and you lose the weight. Of course, being disciplined about it for sure.
Hmm.
But I think the other thing, Jeff, is I have not had a drink in 525 days.
Good for you. Good for you.
I thank you. I
Yeah.
it's the sort of thing where I know, and you said this yourself too, that alcoholism stems from our family. There is a
Hmm.
real
Yeah.
familial tie to our
Oh,
alcoholism.
absolutely. Hmm. Yes. Yeah.
And I know in the case of my immediate family, I know it was bad. And it's
Hmm.
still bad in the sense that, and I'll freely admit this, why not? I know that my mom is a dry drunk. She can't
Hmm.
drink because she's
Hmm.
type 2 diabetic.
Hmm.
So I know the importance of me not drinking
Hmm.
because one, it leads me to overeat or vice versa.
Hmm.
But secondly, it's not good because diabetes runs in my family too.
Hmm. Same with me. Yes. Yeah. And what was interesting is that at that time also, I actually started smoking cigarettes,
Hmm.
and at the same time, and as you know, with my history, at 32 years old, I was diagnosed with cancer, like unexpectedly, and was told that I had to be on the operating table 12 hours later to save my
Oh
life.
God.
Um, and for me, 20 plus years later, to go and start smoking cigarettes shows you how powerful emotional turmoil can be in your life and can trigger those kinds of things. And so that became an addiction for 3 years. I smoked cigarettes, which I never in a million years thought I would ever do. But I had to fight my way off that. I did 4 or 5 years ago. So but the emotional events in your life can 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 really trigger those excesses, those addictions, those danger points for each and every one of us.
Right.
And so you always have to be conscious of it. You have to find other avenues when you're faced, because everyone will be faced with turmoil. It's part of life. It's um, and you'd love to think that you're going to steer clear of it and the road's going to be smooth sailing, but it's not going to be for everybody, for anybody. And there are going to be times, and it's very easy to get pulled into those types of situations, and and then fall victim, to
The
the
one
kinds
thing
of
I'm sure you've heard,
addictions.
Jeff, before is the fact that you cannot change the past. You can learn the lessons from the past, but you can't basically drown in the past. You
Right.
control the
Right.
now, and
Hmm.
tomorrow is not a guarantee.
Right. Absolutely. Never forget that.
Mm-mm, never at all. Some comments
Yeah.
as we were going about this.
Okay.
Uh, Susan says, "Hi, JV. Welcome to your guest, Sean." So Susan says hi.
Hi,
Um,
Susan.
Paul joins us from Facebook. Says, "Watching while yelling at stream elements just work." Well, I'm glad you're paying attention tonight instead of just playing with stream elements for sure. Leah is joining us from Facebook, catching this from a pedicure chair. Glad you're having some self love, some me time. That's good.
Cool.
Sean says, "Hey everyone, thought I'd join us via YouTube this time." Quite frankly, Sean, I'm glad you're here, whether you're Facebook or YouTube. So I'm glad you're here tonight, Sean, for sure. That says hi to Sean. Um, Paul weighs in and says, "Oh my God, Jeff, that's crazy. Glad you're able to beat the cancer." Me
Oh,
too.
thank you very much, Paul. I am very glad to. It was not a fun time.
Mm-mm. Sarah says smoking is an incredibly difficult addiction.
It's interesting, Sarah. It's a good point because I was able to give up the wine much easier than I could the cigarettes, and I really had to fight my way off those. It's just a horrible addiction, and but it's as powerful an addiction as anything. It really is. So
Mm.
and you would think a cancer survivor would never even contemplate having a cigarette. You just how stupid can you be, right? But again, it's you're looking for anything to get you through.
Jeff, to that point, I I want to share something real quick in the sense that I lost my uncle to pancreatic cancer,
Hmm.
and he had a chance to get an operation to basically offset that cancer. And we were thinking, okay, well, great, you're on the steps and you're on the way to fixing this, and you're going for chemo, you're going for this and everything. And he's smoking cigars. It's like, how you doing this? And it killed him. It killed him. It killed him eight,
Wow.
9 years ago.
It's an incredibly powerful addiction. It really is.
Without
Now, if
question.
I found out tomorrow I was going to die from cancer in 6 months, I'd probably start smoking and just
Ah,
enjoy the last few. No,
no, no, no, no,
no,
no.
I know.
Sarah says the challenge of growing our spirits is paying close attention and staying well aware when the going gets tough.
It's
Going gets tough,
exactly
the tough
true.
get going, right?
Very, very true. Very accurate statement.
Susan says,
You have
so
to
did
know.
you?
You have to know how you are, um, and know what your vulnerabilities are, and know where your danger points are,
Mm,
and just try to stay within those guidelines. Those guardrails. So,
oh, yeah. I
right.
mean,
What was somebody just asked about smoking? I think it's a good. Oh,
Susan asks, so did you use the 12 steps to give up the smoking? She's been not smoking for 19 months.
good for you, Susan. Congratulations. I didn't because I tried all the the standard methods, and I never could get off get be successful. And so what I did finally was I just narrowed it to the cigarettes I enjoyed during the day, which was like maybe four, and that I truly enjoyed, and and then one by one, like a week by week, I'd drop one,
Mm-hmm.
and I'd be down to three on a day, rather than 15. Okay, and then I would be down a week or two later to two, and then finally I got to a point where it's like I don't need this. And then it was tough the first few weeks where I went completely, but then I kind of never looked back. Never looked
Mm.
back. Of course, I gained weight when I stopped, so I had to go work that off. But oh well.
It's the lesser of two evils, right?
Yeah, yeah, it is. So
Yeah, it's funny, Jeff. And I'm not sure if you know about this, but in internal family systems, they have a concept known as firefighting, right?
hmm
So
hmm
the firefighters are there to obviously, as the name entails, puts out a fire. Well, the fires are basically those gaps that are in our emotional, mental, and physical psyche.
hmm
And for some of us, those fires are massive, huge fires where we're overeating or we're drinking or we're doing drugs or we're gambling or we're doing this, we're doing that. And then there's a sort of mindset that eventually you have to replace one firefighter with another firefighter that is not as nefarious to help put out
right.
that gap.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's very true. Yeah,
So the
and
thing is,
I'm much more comfortable having put on 6 or 7 pounds
mhm,
rather than continue smoking. So
I agree.
yeah.
That's I'm glad you stopped that. And I'll be honest with the audience I have here. Notice that up on the board, I talk about the weight loss and I talk about the gambling, no gambling for 200 some odd days, and then the no drinking. The one thing that's not up there, which I'm going to admit to, is every now and then I still have a cigar, but it's not as much as I used to when I was
hmm
overeating and that. So it's not
Yep.
completely cured from that perspective, from my sort of perception as well. So I totally get what you're saying.
hmm
Sarah had a comment. Our brains have nicotinic receptors. That's part of it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, what was the movie? Was it it was the movie with Russell Crowe who played the informant
Mm.
that testified in Congress about the chemicals they put in cigarettes. and I mean, it was a true story, and um, the addictive chemicals that they put in cigarettes was, I
Is
mean, it
it
was
Thank You for
just
Smoking or something
scary.
like that?
No, that was another one. That was a comedy. It was very funny, but
Uh,
no, it was. I think the one with Russell Crowe, I think it was called The Informant or
hmm.
something, where he literally testified and they had kind of footage of him testifying to Congress about what he had done as a chemist for one of the major tobacco companies, and it was scary stuff. It was very scary stuff. I remember when I was in college, I had a debate one night with a fellow economist, and I we talked about where we wanted to go with our careers after school. And yeah, Paul, I think you're right. I think it is The Informant. Yeah, and I sat at my table one night and we had this huge debate and argument that, where are you going to work? What do you want to do when you get out of school, when you're done? And I said I would never work for a tobacco company. I would never, ever, ever work for a tobacco company. And he said, oh, I'm going to go wherever I get the highest offer. And I said, I don't care how much they offer me, I'll never go. But
Hmm. Um,
it
it,
may,
it,
I'm not sure, the insider or the informant, it was something like that. Um, but I'm pretty sure it was with Russell Crowe. It's a really good movie. If you haven't seen it, get on Netflix and find it. I'm sure it's out there. But
well, I mean, this is the part of the show where the host basically makes a plea to the audience. If you guys can basically tell us if it's the informant or the insider, just let us know. Just let us know in the comments. We'll be waiting for you. Uh, Callie says I quit by reading Alex Carr's book, "Easy Way to Quit Smoking," and then she was trying to correct that Alan Carr's book, right?
and I wonder, and what is that? Oh, I think I did get that book. I never got through it though. I never got, but is that the one where they say it's all in your mind? And
I
and
believe it
and
is.
yeah, yeah, it was really good. And the only thing stopping you from it was all up here, you know, that you didn't think you could. You're programmed to think you can't do it. It was, I thought, really good.
Paul, being the brilliant comedic mind that he is, and a dear friend of mine, he came up with alternate titles for that movie that we still cannot find a title for. Beautiful Smoking Mind or The Smoking Gladiator. I mean,
Hmm.
it could be those two. We have no idea.
Yeah,
But
yeah. I'll have to look it up. I'll have to look it up. Google it.
Paul checked it is the insider. Thank you, Paul.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
Well, okay. We'll go with that one. I remember it was one word that began with an I, so I'm inclined to think that's it. So,
So Sean, 10 points for you, and Paul,
okay.
thank you for checking that. Um, Sarah says there are still to this day over 200 unnecessary chemicals in cigarettes.
Wow. And I would guess many of those 200 are there purely to addict you.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, it's funny. It's the number 200 rolls to mind because you think about the number of cigarettes that are in a carton of cigarettes. It's 200.
Yeah,
200
it's true.
chemicals, and
Yeah, yeah.
always about numbers. Hey Elo, how are you? Good to see you. And he says hi to Paul and Callie as well. Sean was debating buying the easy way to quit drinking before he finally quit.
Hmm.
I think the thing is,
I'm not familiar with that one, to be honest with you. But
neither am I. So, Sean, if you
okay.
want to put in more
Okay.
comments about that, that'd be great.
Yeah.
I think the funny thing is, Jeff, I don't subscribe to one methodology over another. I do believe in the 12 steps. I do believe in the
Hmm.
serenity prayer. I believe in all of that.
Hmm.
And in a time where we couldn't go to AA meetings in a certain word that I cannot say because I don't want to be demonetized, we go online to figure out how other people are doing it and we try to find the best way to not do these things anymore. Um,
Hmm.
but it's just really interesting to see what sort of different methodologies there are as people quit these addictions and try to go onto a life that's a lot more healthier for them, a lot more
Hmm.
smarter and whatnot. I was going to ask you, as any sort of addiction program or whatnot. I mean, is there one that subscribes to you? Are you more of a AA? You do cold turkey? You do this?
No, and I didn't go to AA, and I didn't do cold turkey. It was I guess I'm fortunate I was able to pull myself, up a bit. I had good friends too,
Mm,
who weren't afraid to
support
say,
network.
"I'm worried about you," you know, and and uh and so you know, I was able to kind of just pull myself back and not have to go cold turkey, but recognize what I was doing and face it, and then say, you need to pull yourself together. And there was no magic. I didn't have a magic program. I just had a couple of friends who, weren't afraid to tell me they were worried about my behavior. And you know, um and then also I at that time I had some other friends that I was hanging out with that were very heavy drinkers.
Mm.
And so I had to start pulling away from them because that was not where I needed to be right then. So, so,
Jeff, there was a time where we knew each other where I was drinking very heavily,
mhm,
it's amazing how much stress can cause someone to do that. I mean, it's
mhm,
something that has ebbed and flowed in my life multiple times, and I can
mhm,
understand what you're saying for sure. I, as I'm sure the audience, are very pleased that you are healthy and you're doing the right thing for yourself and you're taking
mhm.
care of yourself. It's so important.
As I am for you. I'm amazed at what you've accomplished, John. I really
Thank
am,
you.
I mean, because the last time I saw you live, other than pictures on Facebook, was, back when we worked together. And I
Yes.
mean, what a transformation, just amazing transformation. So,
The funny
took
thing
a
is,
lot of
Jeff.
strength.
Oh yeah. The funny thing is,
Yeah.
Jeff. I lost the weight, almost all of it, back in 2011,
Uh huh.
only for me to gain it back and then some. So I go 440 to 245, the best of where I
Hmm.
was in 11,
Okay.
and then I end up going to 480 in
Wow.
January of 2019.
Wow. It's amazing.
But it talks about the psychological influences that are around you that cause you to do things that you normally would not do or things that are
Yeah.
absolutely unhealthy for you.
Yes, absolutely.
It's a sort of what I was like crying in the middle of an airport saying, I need to remove the things that are holding me back. I need to remove my roadblocks.
Mm-hmm.
That's what the last 2 years has been about, Jeff. Removing the things that have been holding me back.
Yeah. Yeah. And that is a big part of it, facing up to those things. Sometimes that faces you to confront relationships, you
Mm-hmm.
know, work situations, whatever the case may be, that can be very challenging and can be very painful to get through, you know.
Oh, without
So,
question. It's amazing how much toil the human psyche will put us through in order for us to make some sort of balance. And that balance may not be the best balance. That's why we always look for our support networks. That's why we
right.
always look to other programs and figure out how to fix this because it affects so many people. And we've learned so much more of that within the last 6 to 9 months, haven't we?
And sometimes you're able to bend a lot before you break.
Mm.
And what I mean by that is that you'll bend a lot in an unhealthy way to accommodate toxic relationships or environments until the point where they become too toxic and you break, and then you take action. And that's not easy, but necessary.
Yeah, it's definitely very much necessary. And the thing is, removing things, we talk about things you remove. It could be toxic individuals that are in your life. It could be toxic places that you go to. It could be toxic jobs that you do. It could be a
Hmm.
whole consortium of different things.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
Sarah had a comment said vaping as bad, if not worse, but the nicotine is the primary addictive ingredient. I know some
Yeah,
people that vape. It's
it's just as bad. And the tobacco companies are seeing it as their big future. I mean, it's crazy. It's crazy.
Elo had a comment said, "Hey Jeff, nice to meet you. If you're JV's friend, you're my friend as well."
Oh, thank you, sir.
Love you, Elo. You're awesome,
Appreciate that.
man.
It's good. It's nice.
Sean says, "I think it was the same author Callie mentioned. I want to say he wrote one book for drinking and one for smoking." And then
Okay.
Callie weighs in and says, "If it's Alan Carr, I stand by it. He's absolutely amazing." So Alan Carr
I'll have to
definitely,
look. Yeah, I'll have to look that up.
yeah, definitely a great author in that sort of realm, and certainly I don't have any referral code to Amazon or anything, but if you look up Alan Carr, you do that sort of thing. Des says, "I believe in an open pathway to recovery from any addiction as long as it works for you. Stay away from the drama in what works best." Brilliant, Des.
Good advice. Yeah.
I mean, I would say, Jeff, as far as when dramatic situations arise, and certainly when you work a high pressure job and you're putting in 70, 80, 90 hours a week, what what is your sort of mechanism? How do you, one, I would say, and it's so common in 2020 to say this term, but what's your form of self love? But then, secondly, how do you gravitate and centralize back to a place where you feel yourself?
Good question. I have always been somewhat of a workaholic. I mean, that's just, it's been in my blood. If there's an addiction I have that has been very long term and sustained, that's probably it. It served me well in my career, um,
Mm-hmm.
but not always in my health. Um, I've had numerous hospital episodes because of overwork and
Mm-hmm.
stress related illnesses. Um, but I think what helps center me is for me in particular is nature, and I have a beautiful horse property that has kind of rolling fields and beautiful mountain views. And
Mm.
when it just gets too intense, I just put my laptop away and I walk out my fields and I just stay out there and I walk along my fence line and it helps center me. It helps recenter me. Or I get in my race car and do 150 down the racetrack,
I was
So
waiting for you to say it. Yeah, you're an incredible
that's yeah,
driver.
that's probably my biggest passion. But where I where on a day-to-day basis, I will very often middle of the day, because my days are about 12 to 13 hours, and as a matter of fact, after I finish here, I have another presentation to do tonight. So,
Ah.
but but um, but all in the middle of the day, if I have a break in my meetings, I'll just grab a cup of coffee and take a walk, or grab a seltzer water and go walk in my pasture, and
Mm.
just kind of like take a deep breath. Take a deep breath and decompress for 15, 20 minutes. Sometimes that's all it takes.
How are you
And I'm
with meditation? Do you believe in the meditation?
Yeah, I do. I was never very good at it, and I was never able to really kind of get myself in that kind of peaceful state. And I tried, but often, I'll just sit with my wife, whom I love dearly, and just kind of hang out. But the two things that really are help recenter me are, the racing and walking in my fields. So
Yeah.
so
The
and the
ability
racing
to.
totally, if it would, it totally takes everything away.
You were just in Watkins Glen, weren't you?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, that's
Beautiful
incredible.
Grand Prix circuit. Very, very fast racetrack. Pretty cool. So
That's awesome.
a lot of fun.
I found that sitting on my bed, whether it's my bed here at home or on the road at a hotel, for 15, 20 minutes in the morning and then another 10 minutes at night
Hmm.
using an app like Headspace or just listening to water on leaves and just trying to zone out and do basically visualization helps me considerably.
Another thing I will do is go into. I have a little sanctuary in my living room where I have my nice stereo, and I'll just put on some
Mm,
really nice classical music, and I'll just kind of that's probably a form of meditation in a way. Um,
absolutely.
but uh, but I think again, walking in the pasture is my that's really my release because I just feel like when you're out walking in in beautiful grassy fields with nice mountains around you that you're kind of as close to God as you can be. Whatever your God is, I make no preconceived notion of everybody's God, but if that's kind of where I find my peace. So
In fact, someone in the comments mentioned that I'll bring for. So good evening, John. Voting for, waiting for Pennsylvania's vote. Hopefully, people won't start drinking. No worries
yeah,
here. And she also says nature is my go-to God's country. So yeah,
good for
God's
you.
country is
Yeah,
very important.
yeah, it is. It is nice if
Elo said,
somebody else feels that.
"Oh yeah, yeah." I mean, the
Yeah,
other thing
yeah.
is, I would go up now if we weren't dealing with what we were dealing with. I would take long drives, go up to like Saratoga Springs up there, spend a weekend up there,
Hmm.
do a lot of hiking, and I love that sort of thing. That's what
Yeah,
centralizes me. So I totally
yeah,
get that.
yeah, yeah.
Elo says sometimes it's necessary to remove ourselves from an environment in order to move forward. Tough decisions, but not impossible.
Very, very true on both sides of that statement. It's very tough sometimes, but when you reach that breaking point, kind of goes back to what I said earlier. You bend and bend and bend, but sometimes you hit that breaking point where I have to remove this toxic situation from my life, whatever it is, work, relationship, whatever.
Right.
And it's tough, but it's not impossible.
Sarah says there are many aspects of our economy that are organized around adding or around addicting consumers.
Yeah, absolutely. Think about it. Think about gambling casinos. Think about
Oh
bars.
man,
Think about, I mean, just it's endless. Yeah, yeah.
it's amazing. I go as far back as when I was in college. Mid '90s, mid to late '90s, and I had a roommate who was a food science major at Penn
Hmm.
State, and the amount of things he was learning about what goes into food and processed food and whatnot to make it more marketable was crazy. And that was like 96, 97. Fun fact about Penn State, by the way, that's where the Snackwell's brand from Nabisco got
Oh, really?
originated, was at Penn State.
Huh, huh.
Paul says walking is the best just to disconnect from everything.
I like that. It's good. Yeah.
Elo says meditation has worked miracles for me.
Good. I wish I had been able to really get that to work for me. But I could never get myself into that state. I guess I'm just too hyper, you know, to
Headspace.
allow myself to go there. So I
So
think,
you have a iPhone or an Android, obviously.
oh, yeah, yeah.
I would
I have
say,
two,
yeah,
three.
download Headspace. They do a free program, 14 days.
Okay.
It's just first of all, the guy is a monk
Hmm.
and walks you through these programs and basically works on trying to center your mind, removing the extra stuff and allowing you to visualize without being consumed by it. He's
Okay.
incredible.
Okay.
Let's see. Susan says, "Do you ever feel like you're not that person you were now?"
Hmm.
So do you notice a difference that you are now versus what you were 2 3 years ago versus say when we were hanging out with each other back in back in the Connecticut days, that sort of thing.
It's a good question. Certainly more wisdom and more intolerance to drama. I won't allow myself to be in a situation where I feel like drama is interfering with my life. I just would never tolerate it. I went through too much. And um, and I told you, John, and I'm not afraid to say it. I mean, when
Go
you're
for it.
in a relationship with a stepchild, and the stepchild has your wife on the garage floor with a hammer over her head, saying he was going to kill her. He had his hand around her neck. Um, I would never allow myself to get into those situations again, and I would walk away much earlier. So, and that's kind of what drove me down into the the dark, not the dark side, but it put me in a bad way, and I wouldn't tolerate it. I would put my foot down much sooner. So, and
Right.
we've all done that. Again, it goes back to how far do you bend before you break. And I bent way too far. You know? So I just would not allow that to happen to me again.
Oh,
So,
amen to
and
that, Jeff.
that's just wisdom, you know, over the years.
When we're in the midst of it, we don't see that. It takes
Right.
us to go to a
True.
different level to say, oh my God, I have to get out of
Yeah.
this and figure out how to fix this.
Right. Right.
But you know,
Well,
the old
at
analogy of
times
the
you live
mask.
in fight or flight, but sometimes it takes a long time to get to the flight stage.
Right.
You keep fighting, you know.
I think more times I've heard in the last 2 years is you have to look at life the way you would look at putting on a mask on an airplane. If they lose cabin pressure, you have to put the mask on you first.
First.
Then you
Yeah.
worry
Yeah.
about the other people in your row.
Right. Right.
Sean says, "Elo, that's so true. Certain people, places, and things, I have to distance myself from to stay successful in early sobriety." So people, places, and things that basically were hampering Sean
Yeah.
needed to do that distancing to ensure that he's going to
Yeah.
be sober.
Good for you, Sean. Oh,
Des says, Sarah, so true. The amount of money made from the taxes through alcohol,
yeah.
it keeps growing for sure.
Huge. Absolutely.
Christina says, spending time in nature can improve memory, lower stress hormones, and reduce feelings of depression or anxiety.
Hmm.
Christina is a sleep expert. Definitely
Oh,
a
really?
very knowledgeable person as far as that.
Okay.
Elo says it's never too late to start meditation, Jeff. I have ADHD and anxiety. I went to a psychologist for meditation and it helped. Mindfulness is a very powerful thing.
It's interesting because the person I was married to that I referred to that I finally split off with was a mindfulness expert trained by is it John Kabat-Zinn? I think his name is
I
in
think that's right.
mindfulness, one of the premier experts, and um, but I wasn't able to get there. So I applaud you for doing it, and you. But I think maybe I'll dust that literature off again and see if I can try it again. Nothing
Absolutely.
lost by doing it. So
I
okay,
know I'm a big believer in that. I think
yeah.
meditation's definitely helped me over the last 2 years. It's something I am religious about,
Mm-hmm. And in relationships, living in the present moment is very, very important. So
for sure. Elo says anger blinds understanding. It is always anger blinds understanding. It is always good to walk away from situations when we are mad.
exactly, yeah.
Des says drama is the worst thing to be involved in. if you're in recovery.
Hmm.
I know from
It is.
a lot of people I've been working with um, over my career, but also within the last, I would say, 2 years, where if they are a treasure trove of drama, there was a very good chance that I don't spend much time with that anymore because I know how toxic they are.
Hmm. Yeah.
We don't.
It's a similar theme to what I said about not allowing yourself to be caught in that,
Mm-hmm.
and just putting those boundaries around yourself, you know. These are the boundaries that I'm going to work around within, and protecting yourself.
Oh yeah, self love.
Yeah. Yeah.
We as a society, we fail to recognize how detrimental interpersonal toxicity is to each other.
Hmm. Hmm.
Not by only by way of the fact that someone may be toxic or someone may be gaslighting, which seems to be the most popular term in the last 3 or 4 years,
Yeah, it's
but
a
the
popular term. Yeah.
fact that you own your mission, you own your path forward. If you let other people deviate that for you, you're at the risk of other people, other places, other things. You own
Hmm.
this.
Yeah. Yeah.
You want to talk about exes for a
But
second?
it's
I know
that
that was
that's
fairly
probably
much
one
of
of
a
the
thing too.
hardest. Oh, no, I was going to say that is probably one of the hardest things that we all have to come to grips with, that we own it, and that's not it's that is a lot easier, even at my age, is a lot easier said than done, that we all own our individual self, and to not allow ourselves to be guided by the wrong things, and or to be consumed or steered off course by
Right.
those kinds of behaviors and drama. We it's a balancing act that we all face probably every day. Different situations, different people, different relationships, different work situations, whatever the case may be. We have to face those all the time, and it's not always easy to find that straight and narrow path. You know?
No.
So so
It's a good half of the exploration, if you will. I mean, to find it and then to hold on to it, right? But you have to find it, and it's not necessarily the first thing you see.
no, no, that's exactly true.
Christina says breathing exercises, mindfulness exercises, or calming sleep stories. Mindfulness meditation can be a huge added benefit in your daily wellness program or daily wellness regimen, rather.
Hmm. Okay.
There are apps out there like Headspace and others that have plenty of those, but there are folks like Christina that are there to help folks that are looking for that too. I mean, it's a question
Okay.
of you want to DIY and look for it yourself, or you want to go search for someone that can help you. Either way works.
Okay.
I guess my last, as we're almost to the hour here, I wanted to see if there was anything that you've grown to understand, the things that you've learned from these chapters that you hold on to tight now, that you make that part of your credo, part of your sort of your stance on things.
Well, I mean, I'll go all the way. I'll start with the early chapter. First of all, being told that you have cancer when you're just turned 32 the day before was a life-changing event, obviously. And I always now refer to myself as BC and AC, which is before cancer, after cancer. It changed me forever, and it took me a while to get there, but it changed me in a way that is so much better because, and I know it sounds cliche, but I look at life differently every day to this day. I look at life differently, and I never take it for granted. And whenever I hear somebody say, and pardon the slang, it sucks getting old, I always say, beats the alternative. It really beats the alternative. To this day, I say that. And so that was, in a way, a blessing. Um, Granted, it was tough, and it was not a pleasant year, but but I'm here with that wisdom, and I've carried that wisdom ever since. So it's not a wisdom that was easily gained,
Mm-mm.
but I'm blessed to have it. Um, I think the other thing is that, as I've said, I've battled through kind of work addiction, and I have had to learn to distance myself from that. And
Mm-mm.
I mean, even as recently as a year ago, I went through a period of 7 weeks. So I was sleeping one night, 1 hour a night. I mean, actually 21 straight days with 1 hour of sleep each night put me in the hospital. And so I still fall victim to it. And, but, um, but I better manage it. And I know when I need to just shut down and say, that's it. Not going to get it done tonight. And that's going to have to be the best I can do. And so, and I have a lot of employees, but I I just sometimes will say, okay, what's that's all I can do. And
Mm-mm.
if something falls apart, then I'll deal with the consequences. So, so it's not, I don't think there's a silver bullet. None of us have a silver bullet.
Mm-mm.
But it's knowing where your limitations are and your boundaries are, and just working up to those and feeling good about what you've accomplished, and knowing that you've given it everything you have. And that's knowing your capacities, and not feeling bad about that,
Mm-mm.
because we all have limitations, and we all often feel bad about those limitations.
We
I
have to
don't.
listen now. We have to
Yeah,
listen.
yeah, yeah.
Jeff, a very interesting thing happened to me 9 years ago, and I'm not sure if you remember this, but um, there was a time in the early part of 2011 where I got sick, really sick. Optic neuritis, meaning I couldn't move my eyeballs. There was
Hmm.
desensitization to the top of my arms, the top of my legs, the back of my head, and I couldn't think straight. And I was hearing weird things, like my hearing was all screwed up. And I went to a series of doctors, both Yukon Medical Center, Hartford Hospital, both of them. And what they found out was, through a series of CAT scans and MRIs, is that I had demyelination in the brain.
Wow. Hmm.
And they wanted to prescribe me with MS.
Yeah.
But it was only one event, and I know, as you know, it's a sort of thing where if you have that sort of very serious diagnosis on your charts, it makes things a lot harder, especially back
Hmm.
in 2011.
Hmm.
But the other thing is to that, it's because I was working 100 hours a week, and I was answering emails at 2 in the morning from the weirdest of places, and
Hmm.
I worked myself ragged.
Yeah, yeah. It's
So
very easy to do.
yeah, I'm not surprised
Yeah.
that happened to you, but I'm glad you're listening. Listening is so
Hmm.
important.
Hmm. And
The
it's not
other,
always perfect.
yeah,
I'll always fight that. It's just who I am. Um, but I know where I draw the line.
the other thing is adages have been very important to me in the last 23 months, in the sense that every moment is a gift. That's something I
Hmm.
gravitate to. Every moment is a gift, whether it's good or bad. It is still a gift, and there is always an ounce of positivity to it.
Hmm.
And then I guess the other thing is iron sharpens iron. When you see someone who's successful in what they're doing, you become strong to learn from that, but then you become strong yourself.
Hmm.
You epitomize the term iron. I have nothing but the utmost respect of you, Jeff, and it's
Well, likewise, likewise, John. I
you don't know
wouldn't be
how
here if I did.
you don't know how fortunate and blessed I am that you did this show tonight, and moreover that you're healthy and you're in a great place and things are good for you right now.
Yeah, they are. Yeah. Yeah, I'm looking forward to the next few years
Absolutely.
because I want to win next year.
Absolutely. Any final comments, Jeff? Anything you want to plug? Any sort of thing?
No, I'm thankful for this opportunity. I really enjoyed it, and I really enjoyed the feedback. That the comments from the engagement from different people. Some really good points that people brought up. It's nice to see, and very helpful to me too.
Des
So
said, when we first get into recovery, there is always people who want you to fail and wait for it to happen.
it's true. Yeah.
And Susan says, I say good enough. Thank you for sharing with us. And I say good
Thank
enough
you.
too. I say better than good enough. You're fantastic, Jeff. Much
No,
love.
no, just an average guy, but so
Anyhow, Jeff, thank you for joining us tonight. I will talk to you real soon, and you have a
okay.
great night.
Thank you, and goodbye, everybody.
Night. That was Jeff, ladies and gentlemen. A dear friend of mine for a very long time, and just someone who truly is. They people use this term all the time, and it becomes passe. I don't use the term much, but when I say someone is salt of the earth, they are salt of the earth. And Jeff, my guest tonight, a dear friend for a very long time, is indeed salt of the earth. And I hope, I hope his story has helped you out tonight as much as it helped me, because there's something really genuine and something really endearing about that. So, a couple of quick comments. Tomorrow night, we do the VF Talks at 5:15 Eastern, 2:15 Pacific, where it's just a free-form conversation about anything and everything, and usually a stuffed animal who thinks he's a T-Rex but is really a Triceratops will sit in the back making inappropriate comments. He doesn't really make inappropriate comments. People think he does, but he doesn't. So there's that. And then next week, I want to quickly talk about next week. We're going to talk about gambling. Tuesday and Thursday next week. I've had a seriously bad addiction to gambling, where it basically put me in financial ruin and massive amounts of debt. So we'll talk about that on Tuesday's episode. And then next Thursday, we have someone that will talk about their story with respect to gambling. I want to thank all of you for joining us tonight here on the Venture Forward. And I'm going to end this episode as I end every single episode, reminding you to stay safe, stay sane, stay strong, and stay sober. You're worth it. Have a great night, and we'll see you tomorrow for the VF Talks.